Now, Taiwan is watching China closely as Russia ordered troops to the Ukraine. And because of a lot of media comment that today Ukraine, tomorrow Taiwan. So how do you see this comparison?
Many Ukrainians here feel like they've been left to fight the military might of Russia alone. And I think that might be something that those in Taiwan would be watching very closely, understandably. The things here are getting very chaotic, at least in Kyiv, the capital city. We know that Russian troops have entered the northern district there, and the defense minister has asked civilians and residents there to make Molotov cocktails, in his words, and take on those occupiers. So it is getting very, very dangerous in the capital city. The next few hours will be critical. It does appear that the Russian forces are attempting to topple the government in Kiev. Where I'm at in Lviv is the safest part of the country. It's where people are fleeing to, but even so, we are getting air raid sirens here throughout the morning and in the afternoon. So it's a very critical and very dangerous situation for Ukraine right now.
Today, Ukraine, tomorrow, Taiwan, this kind of topic in your view?
I think that Ukrainians are focused on their survival right now as a nation. And that might be something that the rest of the world should be watching very closely as well, because it asks the question, what do smaller countries who, though they may be as well defended as they can be, what do they do when their much more larger military neighbor invades and has this attack on them? Ukraine is not a member of NATO, so that means that nobody is coming to its defense. It may get weapons and equipment, but ultimately it is only Ukrainian soldiers who are up against the massive military might of Russia. So I think the rest of the world will be watching this closely, and it is likely, I think, that they may be making comparisons between Ukraine and places like Taiwan. But it's difficult to say right now. Here, Ukrainians are just trying to take it hour by hour.
The White House has affirmed ties with NATO. But after Russia attacked, Pentagon sent 7 more troops to Germany. Will the U.S. help Ukraine war?
Well, I think many Ukrainians are hoping that they'll be able to get military help from NATO allies. But so far, what we've seen is more deployments to those countries that border Ukraine, but not to Ukraine itself. One of the things that some Ukrainians have been asking for is a no-fly zone. That would mean that NATO allies would use their planes to ensure that Russian planes were not able to fly over the area and to try and prevent missile strikes into the country. But frankly, that would risk a wider conflict between NATO and Russia. And this is one of the reasons why NATO allies are so reluctant at this point to get directly involved. They are supporting Ukraine with weapons, equipment, financial sanctions, but not with soldiers on the ground. So I think what happens next and what happens to the capital will determine a lot, and how far Russian troops actually penetrate into Ukraine and how much territory they occupy.
The question is that after Russia attacked, if Ukraine just changed their mind to join in NATO?
I think Ukraine has wanted to be a member of NATO for a long time now. And I think this, if anything, has only convinced Ukrainians even more that they want to have the security protection of something like NATO. The question is really whether or not Russia will allow this. Clearly, the Russian invasion of Ukraine is a way to prevent that from happening. But ironically, if this is a way for Russia to bring Ukraine closer to it, it's actually had the opposite effect. Ukrainians are now defiant, fighting against Russia. It has united many Ukrainians in the defense of the country not to become closer to Russia. So it seems to have had the opposite effect that Russia may have intended.